Good morning! For this project, we are going to be using the approach outlined in Neurographic Art and making a bouquet of flowers and a vase. So let's get started. You'll need colored pencils, your thin permanent marker, maybe a 6B pencil, your tape for circles, and an eraser. So we're going to start by taking a piece of paper out of our project book. Put it in the middle of a piece of paper in our sketchbook. That just keeps the tables from getting marks on them. Then the top area is going to be where the flowers are. The vase is going to be down here. So we're going to start with our tape. It's going to give us 2 circle templates, a super small one and then one that's a little bit bigger. If this makes you a little bit nervous just to start out with, then you can use a pencil. But since it doesn't have to be perfect, I'm going to just skip to the pen. It's really up to you. Oopsie, not that one. We're going to use our gray barrel thin pen for this. We're going to make 3 circles that are all inside the top third of the page. So there's the first one. It's about equal distance down from the top and from the right. We'll come over and make a second one. And then maybe a third one. Keeping it on the page. Each of these circles is going to be one of the flowers in our bouquet. So now that we have 3 big ones, we're going to use some smaller circles as well. And you can put them really wherever you like so that they're somewhat balanced and pleasing. Trust your eye. I like to overlap these because that's part of the neurographic style. It's having those lines that overlap. And I'm just trying to make kind of a cluster of circles that seems kind of pleasing. So big and small circles indicating big and small flowers. You don't have to have the same number that I do, but if you want to, I have 3 big circles and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 small circles. Next, you're going to bring lines down from the circles toward kind of the center, middle of the bottom area of the page. These are going to be kind of like stems. And I'm just going to make them straight. So I'm kind of like bending these. I'm doing 2 lines. And because I know that stems get a little bit narrower when they're at the top of the flower and they're a little bit thicker at the bottom of the flower, I'm just going to keep that in mind. Again, you can do this with pencil first if that makes you feel a little bit better. And at the bottom, I'm just going to make a little acute angle like the end of the flower has been snipped off. Some of these might be longer than others. Some might curve over to the other side. And you don't necessarily have to take all of them down to the bottom. You can kind of, make it your own. Some of them can come all the way up and some of them don't have to. It's just really up to you. Now I'm going to make my vase at the bottom. You can make a wide vase or you can make a narrow vase. I'm going to make an oval up here that is at least as wide as the stem is coming down. And I'm going to make an oval down here. It can be either wide or it can be narrow, like this one was really wide, but I'm going to make this one a little bit more narrow. So I'm going to make an oval down here. And then I'm going to connect the top and bottom ovals. I'm going to come in, out, and down, in, out, and down. Now, mine's not perfectly symmetrical, but that's okay because that is where the abstract nature of this project comes into play and works for you in every case. So don't worry if it's not perfect. That kind of gives it a little bit of character. Now these flowers, we're going to have 3 different patterns, and we're going to practice those patterns on our sketchbook paper first. So you can give yourself 3, 1, 2, 3 little circles, and we're going to have pattern 1, pattern 2, and pattern 3. When we are making this vase, it's as if it has multiple different kinds of flowers in it, and so each pattern represents maybe a rose, maybe a daisy, but we're just going to simplify it into geometric patterns and not get too fussy about what the specific flower is. So the first pattern we're going to do, it starts with a circle in the middle, and you can color in the circle or not, up to you. And then a spiral that starts in the middle and slowly spirals out. It's okay if it's not perfect, especially because this is nature, and nature is not perfect, until it gets all the way around to the outside. That's our first pattern. Pattern number 2 starts with a circle in the middle. You can color it in or you can leave it uncolored, it's up to you. And then we're going to create 2 lines out toward the bottom, 2 lines out toward the top, and then a couple more and a couple more. It's kind of making a pinwheel effect. Again, if yours isn't exactly like mine, that is totally okay, and it doesn't have to be perfect. The last pattern is the most complicated, but it's really cool. You might need to try it in your sketchbook a few times. So you start on the outside and you create a line that comes across, and as soon as it hits the outside of the circle, then it's going to turn. As soon as it hits the outside of the circle, it turns. And you're hugging the outside of the circle, but you're not going right on the circle. And then the line's going to continue, and it's going to actually now, after it's off of the circle, it's going to come across and hit the middle of the next straight line. So I'm starting here, and I'm going to hit the middle of the next straight line, go to the middle of the next straight line, 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 middle of the next straight line. And then you just continue it around and around, making these little triangles. If you look at where you're going, you're looking for the middle of the next straight line, then that seems to help. And it looks somewhat like maybe a rose or some other flower that has multiple petals. So simplified shapes that represent different kinds of flowers. All right, so we're going to go ahead and alternate between our P1, P2, and P3. And since I have 3 big flowers, then I'm going to just pick one of them for each of the 3 patterns. I'm going to start up here with my hardest one first, my P3. It can get a little bit complicated with those other circles that are overlapping. It's So do your best, and if you fall off of the pattern, or if you end up drawing a line that extends too far or not far enough, it's totally okay. It doesn't really matter. You can adapt your design and make it your own. I seem to be kind of like naturally curving the centers of these, and so I'm just going to make that part of my pattern. I'm going to start doing the little circles, and I'm going to do P2 over here. So starting with a circle, coming straight out with 2 lines, straight up with 2 lines, and you can decide how many pairs of lines it makes sense to have. The bigger flowers might have more pairs of radial lines coming out. Just use your own judgment. This is where you get to decide. And then P1 is my spiral, starting in the middle and then spiraling out. The goal is to create lots of lines that overlap other lines, creating multiple small shapes. There we go. Now we're going to just pick whatever pattern we feel like doing and continue those patterns with our smaller flowers. We're going to add some leaves. You do this by making a big curve out, curve in to the tip, and then a big curve out, curve in, and then a center stem. Maybe this one is coming out and back with a center part in the leaf. Maybe there's another leaf up here. Again, if this shape feels complicated to you, you can definitely use your pencil and draw it lightly first. I kind of like 3 that are an odd number, so I'm going to leave that. And then we're going to make the background, and the background is just going to be our big looping lines that are our neurographic lines. You can make them go straight across in the back. That would be kind of neat. Or you can make them just however you want them. So maybe I'll make these straight in the back, not straight, but like I still want them to crisscross, but I don't want to have them get mixed in with my flowers. You can go through the vase or not through the vase. I kind of like the idea of going through the vase but not through the stems. I also like the idea of building off of the leaves and integrating those leaves into the background. Make sure that you cross over with the background so that you get places where your lines are crisscrossing. But I have found that instead of with a thin Sharpie, instead of just making these little curves to round out the hard corners, I really like tracing over the entire shape and softening those corners as I do so. I find that it makes my lines more integrated and it looks a little bit less like smashed flies on my paper. Now that sounds kind of weird, but so I soften the corners and bring them out, and then I trace over the lines, the straight lines that I have as part of my design. Soften the corner. Soften the corners, extend the lines. Just by making those shapes, tracing over those shapes, the lines that you have. So your project is going to look different from mine, and that's okay. You do want to make sure that you soften all of those corners. So we rounded out all of the hard corners using our skinny Sharpie, that's the permanent Sharpie. And it's a little bit hard to see because there are so many lines. So I think in this case, I'm going to do the same approach as I did on my first test, where I used graphite 6B pencil to shade in the outside shapes with varying pressure so that some of the shapes are dark, some are light, and some are dark to light, so that the background is in black and white. And then I'll choose colors for the flowers themselves. In this case, I used colored pencils and used blues and purples for my pattern number 3. I used pinks and oranges for pattern number 2, and pattern number 1 I used yellows. You can use the same colors if you would like, or you can change it up and use other colors. I also used green color pencils for my leaves. And I really like changing and playing with the pressure so that we have darker to lighter and darker to lighter and darker to lighter. Whenever we use the colored pencils, I love that look. I think that it makes it look really beautiful. And I chose orange and pink for my vase. You can use colored pencils or Sharpies. You can use graphite, whatever is interesting to you, and apply it to the new flower vase. Good luck!